I'm so excited to start something new. I've been thinking about how I want to bring in 2017. I'm not saying that I'm huge on New Year's resolutions. I can't even talk. I'm just drinking my coffee now. It's morning. This is crazy. Anyway, I'm not big on resolutions. However, it is kind of cool to go with the cultural wave and the vibe of everybody making changes at this time. And so I think that you get a little bit of momentum from the collective consciousness, I guess, of people making changes. Anyway, so there have been some changes that I've been feeling like I needed to make in my own life, because I'm always trying to, you got to keep up on these things. You can't, your life is like a garden. You have to constantly weed it and look for the problems that could come into your garden, into your life. And for me, I think the problem that I've encountered in myself recently is that I feel that I've become too addicted to to internet news sources, if that makes any sense. Different kinds of news sources, I'm not going to criticize anybody for doing that. I do think that it's important. Part of the reason why I got really pulled in was because they were providing something that was necessary, like a counterbalance to what I was reading in perhaps like the mainstream news sources. So because there was such a vacuum that was being created, it created this, I got sort of sucked into the counterbalance of that, which would be like a lot of people online who are trying to provide this alternate perspective. And so there's a real urgency, and I mean, literally like there's a pressure or there's a force. You get pulled into that. So, and then the desperation of feeling like the world is not as it appears, and then wanting to get more information online, and then you sort of just get sucked into that. And then, or one can. I feel like in some ways I sort of got into that, and then I became very hypervigilant, like feeling like I needed to keep up all the time with all the little changes that were going on. And I don't even need to be specific, because you can fill in the blanks, okay? And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And so, because this is in every domain, it's everywhere, really, politically. And this is all very politically driven narratives. And I'm not saying these aren't important. I'm only saying for myself, I feel like the time and emotional space and intellectual space, cognitive space, all of that is taking up a lot of my mental energy. And so I decided, or have been hoping that I could do this, but I've sort of thought, well, what if I went back to something that I wanted to do back in, I think it was the end of 2013. I had been blogging for 3 years, and I was pretty into that, and that took up my time in a different way as a content creator. That was good to be writing all the time, but it was still constantly looking at your blog and constantly thinking about these sorts of things. And I decided that it wasn't so much my own work that was a problem. I liked doing my own work, but it was the constantly needing to keep up with the blogging community that I felt was interfering with my work. Anyway, so this month, I thought January, and who knows how long it'll stretch, I would go back into what I call the fertile darkness, which is getting away from kind of stimulation content that is created to keep me addicted to it, created to keep me outraged or upset or worried. I'm not saying that a lot of the content isn't valid. I'm just saying that so much of it is a repetition of the same thing. And so I don't personally believe that staying in an outraged state or an angry state is helpful for any person. Anger is very necessary emotion, but we need to understand what it really does. It's actually very dangerous. And a prolonged anger is extremely demoralizing, and I think it collapses other parts of our thinking. Anger, when you're in an angry mode, you're in a black and white thinking mode, and that's not a nuanced way of thinking. It's not the higher way of thinking. So, but it's intended to help you survive. Anger is about, usually it's about drawing a line in the sand, and it's really important during times of conflict to help you to move away from something that you need to move away from. And like little kids, they go through like the terrible 2s and 3s when they're saying no and they're mad. They're trying to separate from their parents. That's called individuation. And that process, it happens again in the teen years in a big way. And that process goes on throughout all of our lives in different ways. So when we're angry, it's a sign that we're separating from something. But we can't be too separated, and we can't be in that state all the time, or else relationships are completely broken down. So that's why I've decided to try, if I can, to not compulsively or habitually look at those online news sources or commentary sites that I feel, at this point, they're kind of saying similar things, the same things. And I feel like I can remember, I've heard all those things, and I can go back into my life of the mind and think about just how to be a decent person. So anyway, that was kind of a long-winded way of saying I'm going to try and read books this month and just think about books. And so this morning, even though I did look at my Twitter and I was like reading about what the alt-right is, and people say this is that and this is that, and I was like, oh my God, I just can't deal with this right now. So I got this short story book years ago. It's by this great story writer named William Trevor. He was born in Ireland, and he's considered one of the greatest storytellers of like modern day. I'll just read a little like snippet of a review that's at the beginning of this book, of the kind of reviews that he gets, because I think it's sort of telling. Let's see. Trevor's compassion and understanding of his characters are at times so overwhelming that as a reader I cannot tell if the pang that I feel after reading the stories comes from the characters and their tragedies, or rather from the awe of one man's insight into any human heart. And I think that's what I love about this guy, is that he's so deep. And I thought, well, why not start this month with just reading one of his stories in the morning? So that's what I did this morning. And this one that I read, I want to tell you a little bit about because I think it's so cool. It's called After Rain, and it was published in the early 90s. I hope you don't mind a story review, but I'll tell you the theme of the story is about how if we don't look at ourselves and our own grief and our own lives, or if we're unaware of kind of the ghosts in our past, then those ghosts will continue to haunt us in our present day life and may interfere with our ability to experience true connection with others and even joy. So anyway, this story's great. So it's After Rain, and it's about this woman. She's 30, and she has just been, I guess as they say, dumped. She really loved this guy, and he breaks up with her in a movie theater. And they were planning on going on holiday, and it's around Christmas time, I think. I don't know when it is. It's just they were going on a holiday. I'm not exactly sure when it was. I was half awake when I read it. But anyway, and so she decides that she doesn't want to stay home. She's English, and she doesn't want to stay home in her own hometown after she's been dumped. And she decides, since there's this holiday, 2 weeks, I guess, she decides she wants to go to this place, it's Pension Cesarina. It's a German place. It's in Germany, it looks like. And she decides she wants to go there because that's where her family used to go when she was a child. And so she has some good memories of it. So the whole story takes place with her being alone and kind of observing all the different people in this resort and what it feels like to be without her lover, who has just told her that they're not going to continue. Anyway, the whole time I'm reading it going, okay, well, what's it about? Okay, we're seeing that she feels very alone, and throughout her time in descriptions, it's written like with an omniscient narrator, but throughout her time here, she talks to other single people. They talk about how the single people are put at solitary tables around the edge of the large dining room, so really kind of highlighting the separateness of isolated people who have somehow, I guess, been unlucky in making enough contact to be able to go on a vacation with somebody else. But so anyway, she's sitting in one of these tables and she's observing the different people in the center of the room. And she's noticed that when she was a kid, everybody who went there was German, but now the place is a little bit different in that they have better food. They don't just serve rolls for breakfast anymore, but they have fruit and cheese and meat and cakes for breakfast, and they also have other types of people visiting, like people who are Dutch and Italian and different people coming. So there's more of a mix of people there. So there's some change. So she's through this time in this little resort, feeling so alone and so sad and wishing that she hadn't come at all. She starts to have memories of her family and what happened to her as a child. And so we learn that, I'm just going to tell you because I don't even know if you're going to read this, but it would be worth reading. But she has memories of how her parents told the family that they were getting a divorce. It was just her and her brother, and how they didn't seem disappointed at all. And she has this memory of them saying, this will be better for the family if we go our separate ways. And then the parents tell her and her brother that they had been having relationships with other people for a very long time anyway, and they weren't. She just says that her parents had no emotion about the divorce, and they didn't seem to care at all, and they didn't blame anyone because it was just the way it was, and they'd been lying all along. And so they didn't seem to really understand what that would mean for her to learn that the people that she thought were very happy, she thought that her parents were happy, and she had good memories of this place, this pension. And so that's kind of haunted her, that these people who she trusted as a child had lied and didn't even seem to care. So she's kind of, I think maybe she's looking at this place in her pain. She's looking at it, trying to figure out if there were clues, I'm guessing, of her parents' unhappiness that she was missing. And she can't really seem to find them as she's visiting there. Anyway, but one thing she really doesn't understand about herself is why she keeps saying, why did this man who I loved, who I thought we were very happy, why did he leave me? And she's mystified by this, and it terrifies her that she doesn't understand why she can't maintain or keep people that she loves in her life. And because that's a theme in her life, is that people leave her. Men or love interests leave her, even though she believes they're very happy. So you can see where that would be terrifying for a person to feel that they have no idea what they're doing to drive somebody away. I mean, she's starting to, I think, get a sense that there's something that she's doing, but she just has no idea what it is. And I believe that that's why she went to this place, because she was unconsciously trying to go back and understand where her original pain came from. And she figures it out, and that's what's so cool about this story. So at one point, it's a very hot place, and everybody's hot all the time, and they talk about it being dry, and the garden at the pension is dry, and you just feel withered. She feels withered all the time, and so she's out and about, and these rain clouds come in, and suddenly it starts to rain. Of course, I think rain can be very symbolic of like emotional release, like finally letting ourselves grieve. And you'll see that theme a lot in literature and stories. And everybody wants to avoid the rain. Nobody wants to grieve because in this, everybody talks about they want to go to the sun. The sun is very important to everybody. Like she was supposed to go to this really fancy kind of chic resort in Greece with her boyfriend who's broke up with her. They were supposed to go there, and it was going to be really fun. He said he really needed to be in the sun, and that's what he really wanted. And then her parents really wanted to be in the sun, and everybody wanted to be in the sun. So sun is kind of symbolic in this story, and so this is a dry place, and people like the sun, but the sun also dries everything out and makes it kind of lifeless. So she gets caught in the rain, or nearly caught in the rain, and she goes into this little, beautiful little church. And so she's in the church, and she says her parents had never much liked going to the churches in these little towns. But she went in, and she ends up looking at this painting, this beautiful painting of the Annunciation scene, which is a scene where I think the angel visits Mary, and I'm really bad right now with I'm pretty sure that's what the Annunciation scene is all about, the angel visiting Mary. So they talk about the angel visiting her, and so she's watching and looking at this painting, and she suddenly has this image of herself cheating on her partners, but she doesn't know. She has a sense of she's been cheating on her partners, but she wasn't cheating on them in the typical way that you would cheat by going out with somebody else, but she has a sense that she hasn't been faithful to them in some way. And I think she realizes that the memory that of the ghosts from her past have made it so she hasn't been able to be fully present with her partners or be able to see them for just who they are. And that's what I took that to mean. But there's this one part at the end. So she leaves, and she leaves there, and she notices that the rain makes everything very clean and pure. And what does she say here? And that the pureness that came after the rain, after she left the church, the way everything felt so cool, and there was a clarity in the air, that she realized that those cool moments don't last, and that clarity that comes in the coolness right after the rain, right after, I guess, the releasing of sorrow and grief. It's like a moment of, where it's a visitation almost, like the angel visiting the Virgin. And she says she realizes that the time that the angel came was like after the rain. It must have been during those moments of being visited. And I just think that's like us, that we can be visited by grace and the divine when we allow ourselves to actually feel and experience our pain directly, and that instead of being lost in it, we can actually be delivered from our pain, and so that we can move on. And I think that's sort of what she ends up realizing. she says the Annunciation, she realizes the Annunciation was painted after the rain. Its distant landscape, glimpsed through arches, has a temporary look that she is now seeing, that she was seeing, like after she left the church from being in there with the rainstorm. It was after rain that the angel came. Those first cool moments were a chosen time. So this story just made me feel great. And I was like, God, I love that I read this story. I just miss it. I mean, I was an English major and I used to write short stories. And, you know, you get away from it. I thought it was so unimportant. I mean, I thought it was important at the time, but as time went on, I guess I just thought there's so many things to think about. But these stories, just the really good ones, are really all about life. Anyway, so she has this moment where she kind of sees her life, and then the author sort of pins it, I guess, at the end here. I don't know if I'm using that term correctly, but because I wasn't exactly sure when she talked about that she was cheating on her partners, but she realizes that her past was interfering, and she says regarding the man that she had just been with, he backed away, as others have, when she asked too much of love, when she tried to change the circumstances that are the past by imposing a brighter present and constancy in the future above all else. She has been the victim of herself. With vivid clarity, she knows now and wonders why she does, and why. With vivid clarity, she knows that now, and wonders why she does, and why she didn't before. So she wonders why she can suddenly see this. But she couldn't see it before. She couldn't see that she was pushing people away by needing them to reinvent or needing them to pave over, in a way, her past, instead of her kind of uncovering her past and looking at it so that she could be freed from it, and that the people that she came to love could be freed from it. She was asking them to help her to build upon something that was unstable and deathly. She says she sees again the brown and green striped tie of the old man who talked about being on your own, and the freckles that are blotches on his forehead. There was an old man, a single man, who she sat next to one night. He came and introduced himself, and he sat next to her at one of those tables in the dining room around the edge. The story of Sainta Fabliona is lost in the shadows that were once the people of her life. The family tomb reeks odorlessly of death. So she's seeing that her family has sort of cast a pall over her life. And she says, rain has sweetened the breathless air. The angel comes mysteriously also. And that was the end. And anyway, I thought that was a great way to start this new year, with reading this story. And I recommend you reading it. It's not very long. It took me, 20, 30 minutes to read it. But it's called After Rain by William Trevor. And you could probably, a lot of stories, you can just Google them online and they'll just show up. I mean, a lot of the magazines that they were published in will let you do that. This is a collection that I'm reading from. Anyway, I think that this is a good lesson for all of us to realize that we can miss contact with the present and with those in the present by expecting those in the present to sort of reinvent the past without knowing it. And so that's a good thing. And also the way that we go about dealing with the past isn't to avoid it necessarily or avoid ourselves alone. So she was alone, and that's when she encountered her past. And so sometimes I think, like, doing things compulsively, doing something addictively, clamoring after people. Anything that we do compulsively or addictively is a way to keep us from feeling too alone. And when we're too alone, what we fear is contact with our pain and our grief that we don't, parts of our life that feel intolerable. And I think that for that woman in this story, she had some pretty intolerable experiences that she just wasn't able to look at on her own. I mean, it's pretty damn hard when you realize that the people who have loved you and the people who have appeared to be happy and have lied to you. I honestly, I can't relate to that. I did not have that happen to me. But I do know that when people, I have been deeply betrayed though. And I'll tell you, when somebody who you think is one thing becomes another, it's a catastrophe. It is the worst thing, and it changes you. And it's the worst thing you can do to another person is to defraud them, to lie to them. And it is truly a terrible, terrible thing to do. And so I feel like this woman had honest pain that she couldn't feel. And it doesn't surprise me that she was 30 when she had this experience and when she had this awakening, because I think when people get to that age, I think certain ages, we crack open at certain ages. We can. And the early 30s are one of those times I've noticed. I see a lot of people in their early 30s in my practice, and that's like a time where people start to, the rubber hits the road or whatever. You get a chance to face yourself because, your life is moving on and you're no longer a child. You can't stay in that child state. It becomes very apparent. And when you can't stay a child, you need to move on, but you need to know how to connect with other people. If you're a child, you can still kind of be connected to your past in a certain way. But as an adult, you need to be able to connect with the world outside of your past and your family. And if you can't do that, and if you suddenly find there's a reason why you can't, it's really a problem. Anyway, so what I think is so wonderful is that this woman, being this age, this man, says it's not going to work out and she doesn't like it, even though she thinks they're perfectly happy. See, she in her mind is just convinced she's happy, even though this person isn't happy. So he has to leave her. And then she goes and she's alone with herself in a memory of her family. So she goes, she even says, I thought that this would make me happier at first to be alone on holiday in a place that was familiar, she says. But then she realizes it's worse, and that the familiarity of her past makes her have to confront her past, or causes her to confront her past somehow. And the most interesting thing is that I found is that she saw in this painting of the Annunciation, that to me was kind of a symbol of how she needed help. She needed help from something, some part of her that was connected to like humanity. She needed help to be able to deal with her pain and grief from the more transcendent realm. And she found that in the church. And she also, so it was like a moment of grace. So I think that's where I'm going to end this, is that we need to confront ourselves, but we can't do it without grace. And, I think if we can practice graciousness to others and to ourselves, we don't know what kind of awakening could happen around us for other people. That the grace that we bring into the world can allow people to be liberated from their pain and sorrows and to move forward in their life and take greater responsibility and to have greater clarity, to be able to see people for who they are rather than who they need them to be or we need them to be. Because when we haven't been when we haven't had that, we'll continue to force people to act as operatives. We'll objectify people, until we are liberated in grace. So with that said, I am going to sign off. I'm going to take my dog for a walk, get back to that practice of taking long, solitary walks, and I'm going to try and sign on again in the next day or two and let you guys know how things are going. And I hope you have a great day. And I'm so grateful that anybody's listening. And I appreciate your comments too. Or if you want to pass this along to anybody else, feel free to do that. Take care.